We are up to the 93-94 season. I'm going to say straight out, I'm not going to talk a lot about the Canucks in the 93-94 season because I've done that. And the New York Rangers, we're going to touch on a couple of things. But again, 93-94 is kind of, we're getting into areas where there's been numerous videos on this channel discussing these seasons, and I want to get into stuff that didn't get discussed previously. So your top 10 players in the NHL according to the Hockey News that year. Number 1, Mario Lemieux. Number 2, Dougie Gilmour. Number 3, Sergei Fedorov, who wins both the Hart and the Selke that year. Number 4, Patrick Roy. Number 5, Brian Leetch. Number 6, Eric Lindros. Number 7, Wayne Gretzky. Number 8, Pavel Bure. Number 9, Scott Stevens, who that year, that summer, St. Louis tried to poach him from New Jersey, but New Jersey matched the offer. Jeremy Roenick comes in at 10 again. So that's your top 10. We'll start with Vancouver. Bure has scored 154 goals in 228 games. That is third among NHLers all time after Mike Bossy and Wayne Gretzky. That is, of course, to that stage in hockey history, right? So Bure is a pure goal scorer. And honestly, if not for knee injuries and just overall injury problems, he would have scored about 600-700 goals. It's just insane. His ability to create goals out of nothing was something we'd never seen in Vancouver before, and I would argue we really haven't seen it since. It's not even close. For pure goal scorers, Bure's the best. If I was going to name the best Canuck ever, I wouldn't have him as number 1, but Bure would be the best pure goal scorer I've seen in Vancouver. Anaheim and Florida are next to each other because they both record 33 wins, which is an expansion record at the time. So again, when people talk about how we might see things work out for Seattle in a couple years, you look at Anaheim and Florida, who didn't have great players out of the gate. They still got 33 wins. You've got to think an expansion team should get about 40, with the rules being as they are right now. The Ducks have 2 20-goal scorers. They have a bunch that have 10 or more, so it's scoring by committee. The Panthers have 3, and they have Bob Kudelski, who scores 40 out of nowhere. It's split between Ottawa and Florida, and it was weird. It was like, wait, Bob Kudelski is a 40-goal scorer. Okay. And I'm pretty sure he never hit that again. It was just one of those weird things that takes place where a guy will suddenly be a goal scorer. He'll never do it again, but it's kind of weird. Boston, John Casey's out. So they moved in Casey, they moved out Andy Moog, and it's a disaster. John Casey does not play great for Boston. I had loved the guy in Minnesota. It does not work out well in Boston. And so he's out. They give him a termination contract. You're out of here. And they look weak in net going into the 94-95 season. You got names like Vince Riondo and Blaine Locker. Locker hasn't made his debut yet. Locker will. He's going to be pretty darn good. He's going to flame out as well. They're out of the playoffs early, and by early I mean in the second round, but it's earlier than you want when you're Boston. Some of these teams have a higher threshold when it comes to what they want from their team. Boston, Montreal being 2 examples of that. Montreal, of course, being the extreme. Neely scores 50 in 49 games. The problem is he only plays 49 games. So 50 goals, 49 games. It's crazy. Adam Oates ends up recording 112 points. I think 80 of those were assists, 32 of them are goals. So again, 30-goal scorer in Adam Oates because he doesn't get to play with Neely very often. When Neely's out, Oates is like, all right, I got to take this myself. Because Boston, when it comes to that top-tier talent, they really are lacking. And contract negotiations between the Bruins and Cam Neely dragged on through the summer following that season. So Harry Sinden, not necessarily the most forthcoming when it came to money. And Boston's a team that makes a lot of money. Buffalo, LaFontaine plays only 16 games with a knee injury. Sorry, guys, a lot of injury news in this one. And it is a knee injury. It's not concussions. He only scores 5 goals in those 16 games. And from here, we will be talking about LaFontaine's injury issues. And meanwhile, Dominic Hasek takes over. Now, Coach John Muckler tries to play it off like I've got 2 starting goalies. I've got Hasek and I've got Fuhr. But when you look at who's in shape, you look at who's playing well, you look at who's the better goaltender, it's Hasek. It is Grant Fuhr is not going to be the starter. 32 years of age, back half of his career, and he needs a change of scenery pretty soon, and he'll get that. And it's going to be kind of weird how all of a sudden Fuhr reinvents himself, but for this season, the reinvention hasn't happened yet. The Calgary Flames, they had a 3-1 series lead on Vancouver, which is easy to forget. Vancouver wins 3 games in a row in overtime, which means that, well, you can look and go, well, Calgary choked. They were all overtime games. They were all close. Vernon and McInnes are then moved after the playoffs. So repeated failures in the playoffs have meant they're moving on from their veteran players, which you can understand, but hindsight tells you things didn't get better after McInnes leaves Calgary. And then again, St. Louis is throwing money at these players that other teams just can't match. That they're looking at going, we can't balance our books if we're going to sign players to the money that St. Louis is throwing at them. Chicago, United Center will open, so that means the end of Chicago's very, very loud arena and the opening of now one that's just pretty darn loud as well in the United Center. They make tons of trades, tons that year, but they still lose to the Leafs in the first round. So all these moves getting made and everything, and the Hawks are kind of spinning their wheels at this point. Dallas has an uncharacteristic 97-point season, and I say uncharacteristic because the Minnesota North Stars had not put up a season anything like that. And so Dallas, this is a big turnaround for them. And had to be frustrating for Minnesota North Stars fans to watch. Like, oh yeah, now you're good. Now that you've left town, now you're good. Moog is in as the starter. He has an iffy season, to be honest. But I'm a big Andy Moog supporter, so I try to focus on the good games. And Darcy Wakaluk. And Wakaluk is still, for my money, the greatest goaltender name ever. I've still got a bunch of Darcy Wakaluk cards around here. His record's 18-9-6. He was really a pretty good backup. I really liked Wakaluk a lot. I like that Wakaluk a lot. Man, that's nice. And then, of course, they lose in the second round against Vancouver, a series that I was very excited about, and then it ended way too quickly. Because it was between two teams where I'm like, you know what, if Vancouver's going to lose to Dallas, that's okay. Dallas loses to Vancouver, that's okay too. And then Vancouver just kind of steamrolled them. The Detroit Red Wings, they put up 100 points. Great season, and they lose in the first round to the San Jose Sharks. A San Jose Sharks team that had never been in the playoffs before. But a San Jose Sharks team that's added Larionov, Makarov, and just in general, they're a better team. But still, San Jose should have taken them out. They finished way ahead of them in the standings. Fedorov had his 120 points to go with his Hart Trophy and his Selke Trophy. And Bob Essensa was brought in from Winnipeg to help them in net. And they sent out Tim Shovelday to make that happen. In hindsight, it's not a great move. At the time, I kind of understood it. Shovelday's best days were behind him. 100%. I don't mean to keep rhyming. I don't know why that's happening. So Shovelday's best seasons were behind him. But Essensa wasn't the answer. It wasn't an upgrade at all. And so they bring in Mike Vernon from Calgary in the offseason to try to fix that. And we know that Vernon is going to play a big role in going out and fighting with Patrick Roy. Peter Karmanos buys the Hartford Whalers for $47.5 million. The interesting thing here is this. The expansion fee is $50 million. If you want a team with nobody, it's $50 million. If you want a team with the Hartford Whalers on it, playing in Hartford, it's actually cheaper. So that shows just how little value the Hartford Whalers had as a franchise. This was a team that was losing a lot of money. And the second half of the season they had, which was 10 wins, 26 losses, and 6 ties, that doesn't help. They fire Pierre Maguire after that season. I've discussed that in another video as well. But the team lost $14 million, according to the owner who sold the team to Karmanos. Probably laughing, driving away very fast. You'd see dollar bills flying out the window. And just, Karmanos has bought a team that's really kind of doomed in Hartford. The way that he ends up handling it is bad in that he promises to keep the team there for a minimum of 4 years. They won't last 4 years. So it's a bad story all around, but this was a team that was hemorrhaging money. The LA Kings. The bright spot for the Kings is something I kind of have to mention, which is that Gretzky gets his 802nd goal that year against, of course, Vancouver. And all of Gretzky's big goals seem to come against Vancouver. You look at out of his 860, 870, 894 goals I think he has for his career. I think 800 of them were against Vancouver. But that's the bright spot, is his 802nd goal, which of course breaks the record of Gordie Howe's. Montreal. This is the end of Red Light Rasico. This is the invention of Red Light Rasico. Notice I've been talking about Rasico's stats from last year and the year before and how they were good. This year they were not. He had a record of 2-6-2, save percentage of .850. He is featured prominently on Coach's Corner for all the wrong reasons. It means Patrick Waugh gets overplayed. He has a record of 35-17-11 with a .918 save percentage. They bring in Ron Tugnut towards the end of the year. Tugnut has a miserable time as well in Montreal as the backup. The thing is, as bad as Tugnut and Rasico's numbers are, Patrick Waugh is keeping this team respectable. The Montreal Canadiens are not as good in 93-94 as they were in 92-93, and he keeps them respectable. They do lose in round one against Boston. I believe that was the year Waugh had appendicitis. I believe that was the year he had appendicitis. Probably had his appendix out in between periods and stayed in the game. That's just the kind of guy Patrick Waugh was. And so it's a down period for Montreal, and there's already some rumblings. We'll get into the rumblings tomorrow. The Waugh trade gets talked about a lot. The fact that the Montreal fans and media had already decided Patrick Waugh's best days were behind him before that trade says a lot as well. The New Jersey Devils, they get 47 wins as a team, which is a record. Marty Brodeur gets 27 as a rookie, so not bad. And there's a general transformation going on with the New Jersey Devils. Lots of defense, a lot of attention to playing in your own zone. And they lose in the third round against the Rangers in 7. That's, of course, where Mark Messier, I guarantee we're going to win the game, so that every time a guy goes, I guarantee we're going to win, people goes, oh, look, he thinks he's Messier. So they won that game. New Jersey ends up being out. I as a Canuck fan wanted New Jersey, but that's just me. The New York Islanders, they're swept in round 1 by the Rangers. And what I remember from that series was when the Rangers didn't play Hextall, or the Islanders didn't play Hextall, Madison Square Garden chanting, "We want Hextall." So when Hextall wasn't in net, Rangers fans would wonder where he was, and they'd start chanting his name, and that's not a good thing. You don't want the opposition chanting for your goaltender to come in and play, because that means it's going poorly. Hextall's numbers are ugly. 6.08 goals against in that series, and a save percentage of .800. So as bad as Rasico was, Hextall's numbers are worse. Hextall's numbers are worse. Getting down to the Rangers, they of course win the Cup. Immediately after winning the Cup, Mike Keenan goes, "That's great, we got a Cup. Yay, I'm going to St. Louis." They offer a lot of money. There's just bags of money out in St. Louis, so I'm gonna go take one of those bags of money, and so he does. And that's one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen, which is a guy going in and saying, I'm just gonna, all right, we won the Cup, yay, and I'm out of here. 1 year, he was there for 1 year. And he takes players with him, and we'll get into that bizarreness when I get to the St. Louis part of this. Philadelphia, Bobby Clark's hired back from Florida. So the successful Florida Panthers lose Bobby Clark to the Flyers, and this team had missed the playoffs again. So while Lindros is still getting his feet under him, he's still respected as one of the best players in the game. The Flyers don't really have the team necessary to compete. And the funny thing is, the Nordiques aren't in the playoffs this year either. The Nordiques are treading water. Peter Forsberg will be coming in the following season to help things out quite a bit. But in general, the Flyers and the Nordiques both look like they're in disarray as a result of the Lindros deal. Things are, again, going to change the following season. Pittsburgh, 22 games for Mario Lemieux that year, and it absolutely destroys any chance of Pittsburgh winning the Stanley Cup. They're out in round 1 against the Capitals. And the fact that Lemieux is falling apart physically is having a dramatic effect on the Penguins. And then all of a sudden, now that they haven't won a couple years in a row, now the discussion turns to, okay, so this team's getting older, so we might want to look at tearing things down. We need to get some new young kids in here who are going to be the young guys who come in and fix this. And that's going to be a conversation for the Penguins for a while. They did end up getting a reprieve. They do end up getting back into a contender spot. But this underlying storyline of, hey, maybe the Penguins need some more young players, that's going to be out there until some guy named Sid the Kid comes in. St. Louis, so we're up to the Blues. McInnes is bought from the Calgary Flames. Free agency works differently back then. First, players have to be older to qualify for unrestricted free agency. I believe it was 31 years of age. Players basically go to the highest bidder, and it's not as much like it is now. Like, I know people are going to say, well, it's highest bidders now too, but back then there were some teams that had way more clout than everybody else, and they could just throw money. So whether it's Toronto, the Rangers, St. Louis in this case, they could just throw money at everybody. Trying, all right, we're going to buy the team that's going to win. And if not for the salary cap, things would have been absolutely ridiculous by now. I think we'd be looking at guys getting $20 million as a signing bonus up front so that you couldn't match if you're the other team. So, for instance, going back to what Montreal just did, if it had been a $20 million signing bonus that first year for Aho, which Montreal could go, we're playing with Molson money, you end up with Aho being poached by the Montreal Canadiens. You'd have a completely different system without salary cap. This team is known, though, as the Millionaires team, or Millionaires Club. So while other teams are spending money as well, in St. Louis is known as the Millionaires Club. Peter Nedved left Vancouver to go to St. Louis to join the Millionaires Club as well because he believed that he was worth more than Trevor Linden. That was the rumor at the time, that he should be paid at least as much as Linden, if not more. And so that's where we end up. So the interesting thing is they lose Nedved. So they sign Nedved, they get Nedved from Vancouver, and that's a whole rigmarole, getting Nedved from Vancouver and all that crap. And the parts that they send to Vancouver helped them get to the Stanley Cup final in '94. And that's after Craig Janney said, I'm not going to Vancouver, to which they said, yes! And so Nedved actually gets traded to the Rangers by the Blues because they're poaching Keenan from the Rangers, and they also get Lidster and Tikkanen. So this is one of those, it's sort of like Michel Bergeron got traded to the Rangers. Now the Rangers are trading out a coach. Nope, they traded in Bergeron from Quebec. Anyways, the Rangers were involved twice in this series in trades involving coaches. So weird. San Jose has 58-point improvement, which to that stage was the largest improvement in the history of the National Hockey League points-wise. 58 points. And they end up going out in the second round. But you know what? That first round upset over Detroit, it shows that you got a plucky young team in San Jose. And it means that everybody wearing teal that had thrown it away in shame the year before could dig it out of the trash and wear it again because the team was relevant again. Tampa Bay, they moved from 23 wins to 30. Which is good, second year team, and they get more wins than they did in year one. The problem is, they actually have less wins than Florida. So they're looking at their cousins in Florida and going, well, okay, so we came in a year before them, and we're in a worse spot. The interesting thing is that you have Phil Esposito in charge, and very few trades are being made. So he learned his lesson in his time with the Rangers. He got it all out of his system, and he realized, you know what, I got to have some faith in my roster, and I got to let them fix themselves. There's rumors during the offseason that year that he's going to go to take a job with ESPN. He instead sticks around as GM for that third year. Toronto, 98 points. They're out in round 3 against Vancouver. So they lose in the conference finals 2 years in a row. This is a contending team. And then what they did in the 94 offseason was they traded out Wendell Clark, which everybody got upset about in Toronto, but they bring in Matt Sundin, and they also added Mike Ridley down the middle. So you have center spot of Gilmore, Sundin, and Ridley, and that is a trio that is absolutely intimidating and one of the best center depth charts of that time. And oddly enough, this is kind of their peak, is 93-94. I know 92-93 they were close, and then the whole Gretzky and the sticks and I know. The controversy from 93, but 94 to me, that's as good as it gets for them. And then it kind of, we'll get to that. They have some good contending teams, but to me it felt like 94 was their best chance, and the Canucks kind of robbed them of it. Capitals, Don Beaupre is on the outs. Not a great season. In the playoffs, they end up turning to Defoe a little bit, rookie. Which is kind of a thing that Washington becomes known for doing. Tabarachi, Defoe, Kolzig, the three of them get to fight out the spot for the net. Tabaracci being talked about as a future undisputed number one kind of disappears during this season. It's still there, but it kind of, I think they realize that Kolzig's the future in all likelihood. Defoe looks pretty good too in his limited action with the team, and things are going to change out in Washington pretty dramatically pretty soon here. The Winnipeg Jets. So finally, last but not least, the Winnipeg Jets named John Paddock the interim general manager, and 2 weeks in, he says, all right, this is going to be a team remade. He starts making trades, and in every single trade, he is trading out a European-born and trained player and bringing in a North American player in this place, or players, okay? And then during the draft, he adds 7 North Americans of the 11 draft picks they have. So he has absolutely decided that the culture in the locker room is too European. There's some belief that it's too blasé. They accept losing way too easily. The team, not Europeans, but the team itself. And so he wants more of a hardworking North American identity for the team. And the Jets only had 24 wins that season. So they moved to the Central from the Smythe. And the belief was that the Central, which had been the Norris, would be a lot easier than the Smythe. They don't have to worry about the powerhouse Oilers or Flames anymore. And then, of course, the Oilers and the Flames, they're not powerhouses anymore as soon as Winnipeg's out of the division. And then they got to deal with teams like Detroit and St. Louis, who are spending money, and they're pretty darn good teams. So Winnipeg can't win for losing at this stage. And there's no talk in the preview for 94-95 about the team being in any kind of trouble. But we know that it is. We know that they're losing money. And that this is a team that's kind of on life support. And it doesn't help that they're losing a lot of games. And they look like they're spinning their wheels as a franchise. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You're just tapping upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.